What's up, everybody? Primetime CP23 here, back with another video. Today we're taking a look at a beginning of the season build for Season 17 for Barbarians. Barbarians do get the Might of the Earth set with Hadrig's Gift, which means you're going to be causing earthquakes and jumping around and having fun. It's going to be great. So let's go ahead and jump into the speed variation of the build. This is what I personally would use to start off the season. This is not the optimal build. It's not the optimum DPS for this build, but it's fast, it's fun, it still crushes T13. At 400 Paragon, I was able to complete a rift at T15, but it was a little janky, it was a little slower, it took like 6 minutes. So I mean, with this exact setup, you have the ability to go a little higher. If you want to take out some of the speed of it, if you want to take out Nemesis Bracers, you want to take out Gold Wrap and Boon of the Hoarder, then you can make it a lot more powerful, and it just won't be quite as fast, it won't be quite as efficient, but you will be able to do higher GRs. I'll get into that build later on in the video. There will be a timestamp down below, but for the actual speed variation, I really like this particular setup. So, what are we using here? So, we've got the 6-piece bonus from the Might of the Earth set, which is going to give Earthquake, Avalanche, Leap, Ground Stomp, Ancient Spear, and Seismic Slam a 20,000% damage buff. This bonus works with the Loot Socks, not sure how to pronounce it. Leap can be cast up to 3 times within 2 seconds before the cooldown begins. So basically, you just leap around, cause earthquakes, hit things with your hammer to drain your resource, and move on with your life. The reason that you have to drop your resource like that is because of the 2-piece bonus. The cooldown of Earthquake, Avalanche, Leap, and Ground Stomp is reduced by 1 second for every 30 Fury you spend with an attack. So, when you drain all of your Fury with the Rumble Rune on Seismic Slam, you're getting 3 seconds of cooldown reduction on those select spells. Skills, not spells. Wrong class, sorry. We're also using a Blade of the Tribes. Warcry and Threatening Shout cause an avalanche and an earthquake. So we do have both Warcry and Threatening Shout on our bar. That causes an avalanche and an earthquake and just fiery death and destruction. It's wonderful. We are using, in this particular setup, a Gold Wrap and Boon of the Hoarder gem for nearly infinite toughness after you start killing a few things. We have a Hellfire Amulet with the Nerves of Steel passive. We'll get more into the passives here in just a minute. Nemesis Bracers. In the cube, we're rocking Ingeom. Basically, on T13, you never stop leaping. You just leap through the entire rift. You're killing things with just your earthquake damage, which is basically procced by your leap. We are using a Fire Rune on Earthquake, so we're using a Mage Fist in the cube. This is a pretty negotiable spot. If you feel like you want a little bit more cooldown reduction to make the build a little less risky, you could try Leoric's Crown in the cube. Alternatively, I tried messing around with Chilinix Chain, I can't pronounce that, so that using Warcry will increase your movement speed by 40%. That might be kind of fun to play with in a group, but solo it's just not that big a deal because you're basically just leaping. You're not landing, you're not walking, so you're still moving very fast even without this movement speed buff. If you did want to squeeze in a little bit of damage from Seismic Slam, you could use Bracers of Destruction in the cube. Illusory Boots would allow you to move through the rift a little easier when Leap is on cooldown. Or you could always remove your Ring of Royal Grandeur, which is our final spot in the cube. Put Loot Socks in the cube. and wear your final piece of your Might of the Earth set. That would free up a ring spot that could be used for either a Band of Might, maybe an Avarice Band, maybe Convention of Elements, something like that. Maybe even a Unity if you're really having trouble surviving for some reason. And our final two gear pieces are Focus and Restraint. Your resource generating attack is Leap. Your resource spending attack is Seismic Slam. Just make sure you're using each one of those every 5 seconds or so, and you'll be golden. That's 100% damage buff. It's nice. Legendary gems, we're using Gogok of Swiftness, Bane of the Trapped, and Boon of the Hoarder. In GRs, you're just going to want to swap out Boon of the Hoarder for either a Bane of the Stricken or Bane of the Powerful, just depending on how high of content you're doing. But when you swap to a GR-focused build, I recommend swapping to the build that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. It's just going to be more damage. You're just going to be able to push higher. It's still pretty fast, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Moving on to the skills for this build, for the speed build, we're using Threatening Shout with the Falter rune. This generates Fury and makes your enemies take increased damage. Seismic Slam with the Rumble rune. As I said, this is going to dump all of your Fury. The alternative is Ancient Spear with the Boulder Toss rune. Personally, I like Seismic Slam better, just my preference. Your main damage dealer is going to be Earthquake, so choose your rune wisely. I like Molten Fury because it's the highest DPS rune. You could use Cave-In, which is going to drag enemies in towards you, but I think that's kind of redundant because Leap, we're using the Call of Ariat rune, which is going to draw enemies towards you when you land. Because of our 6-piece bonus, we also gain the Iron Impact rune for free, which is going to increase our armor. Warcry with Impunity is going to increase your resistance to all damage. You are fairly squishy in this build until some gold starts flowing, so just be mindful of that. And finally, Wrath of the Berserker with the Insanity rune, which is pretty much standard across all Barbarian builds. For passives, using Rampage, Earth and Might, Boon of Bolcathos, Ruthless, and on our Hellfire Amulet, we have Nerves of Steel. If you cannot find a good Hellfire Amulet with one of these 4 passives or Nerves of Steel, I recommend dropping Boon of Bolcathos, because you will need the Cheat Death passive, but you're not going to be casting Earthquake very often. You can when you need to, but you don't really need it, especially in Torment 13 and below. In Wrath of the Berserker, yes, it has a ridiculous cooldown, but again, it's not the most important part of the build, so it's not that big a deal. There's no particular breakpoints or anything you need to be looking at. Cooldown reduction, I've got 21%. Ideally, you'd probably have a little closer to 30%, 35%. Would just make it a little easier to make sure that you're leaping constantly. But as long as you're hitting elite packs every second or third time you have to bring leap off cooldown, you're going to be fine. You're still going to be leaping constantly. You do want some fire damage anywhere you can get it. And you do want to be wearing the Blade of the Tribes because its inherent ability increases earthquake damage by up to 200%. This isn't a particularly good roll. It's only 167%. You also want earthquake damage anywhere you can get it. But that's about it for the speed variant. So for the pushing variant, the biggest things that change is now, instead of focusing on leap and earthquake damage, we're now focused on seismic slam damage. My skills and passives are the exact same. They are identical. I was testing this at 400 Paragon. I was not using the best gems. I was using marquee level gems, but because of the way that the armory works, when you equip a build, it automatically gives you whatever the best gems you have are. So keep that in mind. All this was tested with marquee level gems and a little lower level legendary gems. So the big differences here are you're dropping Ingeom for Fury of the Vanished Peak. It's going to be a massive buff to your Seismic Slam damage. You're dropping Nemesis Bracers for Bracers of Destruction. Again, a massive buff to Seismic Slam damage. Girdle of Giants is going to buff your Earthquake damage every time you hit something with Seismic Slam. We put Loot Socks in the cube. We dropped the Ring of Royal Grandeur for a Band of Might to give you 80% damage reduction every time you cast Leap. And we dropped the Boon of the Hoarder for a Bane of the Stricken. And with this build, at 400 Paragon and Marquee level gems, we were able to clear a GR75 first try in less than 4 minutes. So this has more than enough power for that level of GR. I think once you get into a little higher GR difficulty, it's going to become more of a push build and less of a speed build, which is why I wanted to make clear that this is not the speed variant. The speed variant I already covered a minute ago. This is just maxing out your DPS at the expense of some speed. Your Paragons, for both builds, you're going to want to get movement speed and then dump everything into strength. Cooldown reduction and crit hit chance. This build, I don't believe, benefits from attack speed at all. Resist all and life, followed by armor, life regen, and then area damage, life per hit, gold fine, and resource cost reduction. But ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it helps you in some way going into this season. Might of the Earth is not going to be the strongest setup for Barbarian, but it is a very strong setup that I think gives it a decent start to Season 17. It's definitely worth setting up LeapQuake until you get something faster, something, Charge Barb, or, IK Hoda, whatever the case may be. I feel like this is definitely a good start for Barbarians to go and farm those keys, farm those lower level GRs, and really get that Paragon up. So until next time, this is Primetime CP23, and I'm out.